Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Ascension Playground. This is Ursie. Today, I am still basking in the glow of having had a recent trip. I always forget how much I enjoy just unplugging, and yet it seems that I get in my cyclone of, this is what I do every day. And so, if you're hearing this, might be good to consider taking a break sometime. Took me a while. Anyway, today I'd like to talk to you about what's called the Galactic Center. This is coming across on my radar screen quite a bit. And being part of the Galactic Astrology Soul Reading Group with Julia Balaz, I just wanted to share with you some thoughts about what is the Galactic Center. So we can approach it from a very scientific view about where is it located in the heavens. And then, of course, there's that other layer of the metaphoric, of the symbolic, of as above, so below, as within, so without, that hermetic wisdom. That comes up when you start thinking about a galactic center. I have a few slides I want to share with you. So here we go. Mhm. Something about the center point. If you do yoga, you understand how to tune in and go into that center point of yourself. And something within me thinks that what we're doing actually is moving towards a central place within us that's also in the cosmos. So here's a little taste test of what I'm going to be presenting in class for Julia. It's called Navigating Within Our Galactic Consciousness. And you can see this image. This is a beautiful logo for galacticastrology.com with Julia Balaz. So if you haven't received or looked at your natal chart and the galactic stars that basically energized and gave you gifts or reminded you of some of your life lessons, you can get a free chart and a report from Julia again at galacticastrology.com. Okay, but here's Ursula talking about this idea of navigating in a galactic consciousness. If you start reading some of the books by Lissa Royal Holt, The Prism of Lyra and The Golden Lake, or look at Lissa Royal Holt on YouTube. Some people call her name Lisa, but it's Lyssa. And so she also has a galactic heritage card deck. Anyway, this idea of moving from what some call Milky Way consciousness, which is very much about duality, especially on Earth, the polarization of yes, no, black, white, male, female. Um, you can think of the spectrum of opposites. And this is what we call Milky Way consciousness. But galactic consciousness, that's something entirely different. Well, I'll give you one example. If you look at the constellation of Andromeda, there is an Andromeda galaxy within the constellation. And the research being done around, again, this is metaphoric of energy. What is the Andromeda galaxy consciousness? That is much more about in the flow of change all the time. They're not dealing with polarization or duality. It's constant change. You think it, it's there. You think else, it's there. So it's learning how to hold this idea, a narrative that what we know to be real or true as beings on earth, human beings on earth, if we step into this idea of now we are galactic citizens, and this requires a different framework, a different dashboard, even for how to navigate. So that's why I called that. So I'm not going to be talking about all four of these, but if you're interested in joining us in the Galactic Astrology Soul Reading Practitioners course, this is a kind of a taste test of what we talk about. I'll be reviewing with Julia the Galactic Center, the Super Galactic Center, the Great Attractor, and there's something else called the Shapely Attractor. So, this idea that we think we've reached the limits of what we know for the knowable world, and then just like a Russian doll within dolls, the next aha comes through, the next mind blowing, heart expanding, soul enlightening material comes through. But today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my musings on the Galactic Center. Now, here is something from National Geographic, and you can see Earth is here. And you can see a little arrow that I'm pointing to, but this is the Milky Way. And look at that spiralic um, shape of the Milky Way galaxy. Doesn't that look familiar? Especially today, as we're watching with hurricanes and what they look like from a satellite. It's the same type of geometry that the Milky Way is showing us. So, our Milky Way galaxy, in case you didn't know, this idea of a Milky Way. Well, there is the appearance of it being milk. Some would say the cosmic mother, this is the breast milk that she gives for life. Going back to Greece, and the Greek word for galaxy was gala, which really means milk. I didn't know that. Off to the gala. No, it's in Greek, they'd say, oh, you're going off to milk. So later, the Romans used the word and called it Via Lactea. So again, lactose, lactea, the road of milk. And if you are listening and you like Egyptian, especially the ancient Egyptians, you know that many would show pictures of the solar arc, this boat that after death, physical death, you would just go ride on the Milky Way. It's the river of milk. Okay, here we are. Look at this beautiful image, that there being a center to our galaxy. But as things are very fractalized, again, whether it's big or small, so the universe corresponds with this idea of, spiral. Here we see a picture of the Milky Way, but here's the center. It sits at today 27 degrees of Sagittarius, 9 minutes. It's often called Sagittarius A. But again, look at the spiral nature of the Milky Way. Again, where do we see the spiralic nature or the spiralic geometry in nature? You could think of the pine cone. You could think of some of the sea urchins, things that grow in a spiral. So the fractal reality, this idea of no matter how big or small, it's holding the same shape. And instead of linear, or the planets going around the sun just in a line, following a line, an orbiting or having an orbit, it's much more like a vortex. So it's this movement. It's not just round and around, but it's this way. If you can see my hand, a vortex and a spiral. So when we think of galactic center, think of that particular inner shape. Now, as I did some reading, it was really hard for the astronomers to actually take a picture of the galactic center. Why? Because there's so much space dust around it. So it was really challenging with the telescopes that they had. They'd have to almost like look at where can we get the clearest sky. But the center is a supermassive black hole. Yes, I'll say that again. It's a supermassive black hole at its very core center. And it's approximately 26,000 light years away from Earth. I know, think Buzz Lightyear. Well, this is 26,000 light years away from Earth. And one theory is that the mass, when you think about how large that black hole is, some hypothesize that it could be as much as 4.3 million times the mass of our sun. So when we look up at the sun, we think that's huge. Well, think about 4.3 million of them. That's the galactic center. You see how fast things get in scale and in time. So, and I also wrote down that the galactic center, they hypothesize again, maybe around 14.6 million miles. So that's the diameter. Like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine that. I can barely handle just 1 mile. I'm thinking of that distance, but 14 million. Now, on May 12th, 2022 of this year, look how fresh this image is. The first image of the galactic center without all that space dust was able to be taken at the Event Horizon Telescope. Look at that image. And for those of you who like to track the galactic, here is the galactic center as it relates to the sign of Sagittarius. one last thing here, and I'm gonna end here. Working with Julia Balaz, it brings me so much joy. Not only am I learning, but I love sharing little tidbits with you here on the Ascension Playground. Why? It's basically to help us all kind of open up and be inspired that what we think we know may just be only part of the story. But here's what Julia has said, quote, energetic particles from the galactic center, because it's spewing these particles out. They bathe Earth and stimulate us all to energetically release old woundings. See, do you get that? It's like we're here to learn, right? So, as spiritual beings having a human experience, if we're releasing our old wounds, really being clear, this is what it was, I own it, I see it, I love it, and I release it. And then, if we do that with the support of the Galactic Center, it will help us advance all of us on our collective evolutionary journey. Okay, so and if you're in class, she gives so much information, so much material. It's quite astonishing. Here we go. And let me stop sharing in a minute. So I'm here today, the very last day of September 2022. And I'm just holding space for this idea of that galactic center within me, that massive black hole connecting to the cosmos. As an artist, that's where I go when I say I'm moving into my zone in meditation, in the act of painting as a spiritual practice. And having been a facilitator with the Stargate, people it's a program in Mount Shasta called the Stargate Experience and the Stargate Academy. Um, they're oftentimes talking about the void of pure potential. They didn't come up with that name. This idea of the void has been around a long time. But if you're not afraid of the dark, from which we all begin in the wombs of our mother, and we consider this idea of connecting with a galactic center above and a galactic center within. If you're hearing this and you want to play, think about what that would feel like for just a moment. Or stop thinking and just allow this idea of that connection of my center to the galactic center. And I allow in my prayer with full protection that which is divine and of the highest good for myself and others to come through, whether that's poetry, whether that's making a cake, whether that's art, and whether that's just doing nothing but emanating and just holding that beautiful energy. Anyway, it's a joy to play on the Ascension Playground. Thank you for listening. There's so much more to learn and understand about our cosmos. The Galactic Center is a key player. And did you know there's a super galactic center? And then, as you saw in my chart, there's a beyond the super galactic, there's the great attractor. And then, of course, now we're hearing there's the shapely attractor beyond that. For me, it's this idea of a fractalization of that which is already within us. So, no need to go outside when we already carry it within us. It's just understanding who we are. I mean, the full magnificence of who you are. So, I see you. Take care, and I'll see you next time on the Ascension Playground. Bye for now.